What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another very exciting video. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at one of my top holdings in my portfolio and also the largest company in the world, and that is Apple. And Apple announces their earnings tomorrow after hours. So what we are going to do in this video is we are going to take a look at what analysts are expecting for earnings. We're also going to take a look at why Q2 happens to be a very interesting quarter and announcement for Apple. And then I'm going to give my opinion on what could happen with the stock price after Apple announces their earnings. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. Before we jump into all of that, let's take a look at their stock chart and see what is going on with the company right now. We can see here today, the stock was down a little over 0.5%. And then after hours, it dropped another 1.3%. Over the last 5 days, the stock is up around 1.27%. Over the last month, up around 1%. Over the last 6 months, up around 21%. And when we look at year to date, this stock is on a rampage. Apple is up 33.89%. So Apple stock has clearly been on a tear over the last few months. And we can see that for the second quarter, analysts are expecting earnings to come in around $1.44, which when we compare this to last year when they announced $1.52, that is around a 5.5% decline in EPS. And in terms of revenue, analysts are expecting around $92.84 billion. And when we compare this number to last year's revenue number of $97.3 billion, we again get a decline of around 5% year over year. Historically, the second quarter for Apple is not a great quarter in terms of their revenue and EPS numbers. However, one thing they often do in this quarter is they announce their buybacks and their dividends, and this always gets investors excited. And that's not without good reason. From 2012 all the way through to the end of 2022, Apple spent over $572 billion on share repurchases, and that's the most out of any company. And the company right behind Apple in terms of buybacks isn't even close. It's Alphabet with $178.5 billion in share repurchases over the last decade. And since 2013, Apple has always announced their authorization level for buybacks during the second quarter earnings report. From this chart, we can see how Apple has changed their buybacks over time. In 2013, they really started off with levels around $5 billion to up to $15 billion. And then in 2018, things really started to pick up. They increased their buybacks to anywhere from around $15 billion all the way up to around $25 billion per quarter. And that has had a dramatic effect on the shares outstanding for Apple. We can see back in 2013, they really peaked out around 26.5 billion shares outstanding. And since then, they have declined their shares outstanding by around 5% year over year continuously to where they're sitting at now around 15.9 billion shares outstanding. And this is incredible for shareholders because every time Apple buys back their own shares, that is taking more shares off of the market and thus increasing your ownership of the company. With all of that said, there are still some things to be concerned about, and one of them is the fact that Apple tends to take a stance of net cash neutral. What that means is basically they want their $1 billion of cash to also equal their $1 billion of debt. And right now they're sitting at around $165 billion in cash and $111 billion of debt. So what that means is they really only have $54 billion in net cash to either increase their dividends or deploy into buybacks. And overall, Apple's cash on hand has been declining over the last couple of years, ever since around 2019 when it peaked out around $107 billion. And it's the lowest that it's been since 2015 when it hit around $38 billion. Along with Apple's dwindling cash pile, analysts are also expecting Q3 guidance to come in with another year-over-year decline. As long as this comes in a little less than a loss of 5% of revenue and EPS, this could overall be seen still as a positive for Apple. And some of this decline is to be expected as Microsoft came out and announced that their devices revenue had declined by 30% year over year, or 26% in a constant currency environment. And with hardware making up around 80% of Apple's business, it's to be expected that when devices are not selling well, that Apple will not do well in terms of their revenue and EPS. So in my opinion, I'm actually expecting this year to be a bad year for Apple. I'm surprised that the stock is up so much really running into this year. I think a lot of device manufacturers are going to suffer throughout this year as people have really loaded up on devices over the last couple of years with 5G and also money being more readily available. So I think over this next year to year and a half, I think Apple is going to have trouble reporting positive earnings and also beating a lot of their earnings expectations. So I am really kind of taking a sideline looking at Apple. I am going to hold on to my position and really hold through all these earnings, but I'd love to see the stock fall back down to some of the levels that we saw late last year. Around $125 would be an excellent price to get into Apple. I think over the long term, that would be an outstanding value for the company. But in the short term, I think right now that they're trading almost at all-time highs. When we look at the last 5 years, we can see that they're really trading around that 170 mark, which is very close to what we have seen as an all-time high for Apple. So overall, I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines, actually hoping that the stock falls a little bit so I can add a little bit more to my position. But keep in mind, that is all my opinion. I am just some random guy on YouTube, and never buy a company just because some random guy on YouTube is talking about it. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that match your risk tolerance and your time horizon. With all of that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. And as always, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day.